see. We did not actually have what we thought we would have tonight. So instead, we decided to watch a small RSAnimate by Slavoj Zizek, and then now we're going to discuss the topics. And Alex and I have spent quite a lot of time listening to Zizek, and maybe some other people haven't, but I think it should be pretty easy to discuss what he was talking about. Slavoj was talking about how capitalism, in the sense of how it works today, is dishonest with itself, and the people who engage in capitalism are dishonest with themselves, in terms that he gave the example of Soros, who makes money in the morning and gives half of it away in the afternoon, whereby holding up the institution of capitalism, but giving it a nice face. He talked about how at one point there was the idea of socialism with a human face, and now we have capitalism with a human face. So we're going to discuss those topics. Alex, why don't you give a little bit of a back story on who Zizek is, where he's from, etc.
Zizek, he's from, I think he was born in the 40s or 50s in the 20th century. I'm not sure. Don't take my word for it. He was born in Yugoslavia at that time, in the part called Slovenia, which is now an independent country, Slovenia. And he was a professor of philosophy. He, I think it was in the end of the 80s when he wrote his first English book, and he became very famous. He went to the United States. He taught there at some universities. And I think now, I don't know where he is, maybe he's everywhere around the world, giving speeches in universities. And he was, as he mentioned something in the speech, he was a really pro-Marxist student and socialist and communist and everything this. And after the breakup of socialism, I think he turned to what could be called neo-Marxism, or as he once said, like that he's a Marxist in a qualified sense. So he's not supporting the Communist Party as such, but he's criticizing capitalist society. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's, yeah, well.
And I think we can also, we don't have to just discuss this speech, this was very short, but we can also open it up to talking about any subject in light of economy, etc. So, Tom, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to say I'm actually a little bit more cynical than Slavoj is about the companies making profits and making out they're giving to charity. I agree with him the fact that it's keeping the system alive. I'd like to point out, give you the example that he gave about Starbucks. He said Starbucks were giving, they said they give more money than any other coffee company to fair trade farmers for coffee. And I feel that we, the customers, are getting slightly deceived, even more deceived. We even may think that we're helping. But actually, what does that mean if you're really looking at coffee? We give more money than any other coffee company to fair trade farmers. Well, as they're by far the biggest company in the world, then that's not a big... If they should say we give like a certain percentage to coffee farmers, so we don't really know what they're giving to fair trade farmers.
Could be a 1/10%,
yeah,
a 100th of a
yeah,
percent.
it could still be more than any other coffee company in the world. So I think these companies are very deceptive and sly in how they're wording things to make out that how they're helping is not as much as what we are made to believe.
Do you think that they really do that? They help farmers, or just?
Well, I think they have legal guys in there that they would have to say in a legal way. But you see how it's worded. You see, they don't give you specific numbers. They don't give you specific amounts. They word it in a way that we're like, oh, we have this warm, glowing feeling. But actually, if you really think about what they're saying, it's not really saying a lot. That's the... Okay. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a particularly strong position. Like I've seen I think I've seen him talk before, but I think it's very easy and fashionable to be skeptical of gigantic corporations in the 21st century. Yeah, it's incredibly easy to do it, right? And it's just talking without consequence. We love doing it. But I often think about with charity, the same with war. The best way, war and like conflicts around the world, the best way to deal with these might be to monetize it. That might be the best way to motivate people. So I don't know how skeptical I am of corporations taking an interest, or at least appearing to take an interest in ending poverty. Maybe there may be some leverage there. You look at some of the most corporate people in the world. Look at Bill Gates. He's single-handedly doing awesome things for malaria in the third world, and he's using money he made from corporate efforts and living a life on the basis of a corporation. So yeah, I don't know how skeptical I am. Sure.
But on the other hand, not to totally disagree with you, I think you make a good point, but the whole way that corporations are set up, a corporation is set up, say the board of directors that runs the corporation, their main goal is to maximize profit.
Sure, it's fundamentally anti-human,
right?
Yeah.
Right, and to continue growth,
sure.
Right? Which, if you don't look at the waste or the degradation of areas where the products are made, say an example, or where on the other hand, not necessarily where things are made, but where things go when they die, like when we throw things away. When people buy a product from a corporation, people don't really think about how it's produced or where it goes after the life of that product exists. So, now I'm not saying that all corporations are bad, like you said, or that necessarily just because such and such is a corporation, it makes it a bad thing. Like there's the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in the United States, which is a corporation just because it's such a large entity, it has to be a corporation.
Sure, same with BBC in the UK.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sure, we have very similar things in the UK, yeah. But you're saying, so it's not a blanket definition like it.
Right, that, just like you said, just because a corporation is a corporation doesn't mean it's an evil entity.
Yeah, that's all I meant, really. I wasn't in any way trying to stand up for, like you said, they're fundamentally anti-human, right? They're just trying to maximize profit. But I just meant blending the two, like charity and corporate interest. There may be ways to use that as leverage rather than just like, this guy's making out it's fundamentally bad all the time, every time. I don't know if that seems a bit simplistic to me.
I think in the past, 200 or 300 years ago, companies had an obligation to put some of their profits towards the common good, and that might have been building a railway, or building a bridge, or inputting infrastructure to certain parts of their country from which they're operating in. And after a while, I think the lawyers of the Rockefellers or something got together and said, if we can use this company, make a company as an entity, as an individual entity, we can bypass all that. And that's, I think, what we need to do if we want to make things more equal is to have a more sophisticated outlook of what profit actually is. So instead of seeing as profit as just a means of making money, incorporate what is profit in terms of the effect on the environment, as you were talking about, in terms of disposing of things, the effect, the profits, what happens to the actual profits, does that go back into the community, does that go back into some kind of good for all system? If we can redefine a profit, what we mean by profit, as opposed to just sort of this is money and this is the most important thing, then I think we'll see sort of a more equitable system.
You're kind of talking a bit about redefining human nature there, right? You're saying like then the interests of the corporation should actually be changed.
Yeah, but no, not because 200 years ago it was, you know, it's just that the lawyers have got involved with the Rockefellers or with certain groups and got the corporation to be defined as a single entity, an individual entity, which means it doesn't have to give back to the public good.
Okay.
I mean, if we, my opinion is, if we don't do that, what would happen? See, if we carry on letting these companies who are already more powerful than a lot of countries do, what would happen? You see, so.
Don't they get a huge tax write-off? Like a huge tax write-off for giving to charity. Big companies or individuals who make a lot of money and give to charity just can write that on their tax form.
Wow.
Then they get a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, there's definitely tax breaks for charities as far as I'm concerned.
So they don't really, actually they're using it to their advantage that way too. So still making money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of this... Hi. So a lot of this speaks to systems, political systems, economic systems, the system of ecology versus the system of economy, and the perversion of what economy is. And now you were talking about, Tom, you were talking about, you know, if we could say, and you made a good point, can we force the corporations to do this, right? How can we make the corporations responsible? You know, just by, say, after they leak some oil on some land, fining them per barrel of oil isn't necessarily the most effective way. Like, I think BP just recently got hit by, what was it? I don't know. $4 billion fine or something like that. Now that might seem like a lot of money, but for a company like BP, that's only what a small, less than 10% of 1 year's exchange for that company. So after a few years, it really doesn't make any difference. It's not necessarily a motivator for them to change their habits at all. The motivator is to keep making more money.
Yeah.
So my point is, you're talking about how can we make corporations be more responsible. Now, I want to ask you, could we do that through regulation? Where does that come from?
Well, one thing we could definitely do is we actually got, I think we got more power than we think we have, because all companies want to do is make money, and if you don't buy their product, then they're not going to make as much money. And as individuals, we can just, so for example, I don't buy at Starbucks because they don't pay their taxes in England, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to get fooled by their propaganda that they're helping the farmers. So I'm not going to buy from them. And if everyone did that, then we would have changes. And I think it will force the companies to adapt to depending on what we would want to spend our money on, they will adapt to us rather than us adapting to them.
It'd be really cool if we could find some way to coordinate that. If there was somewhere you could go on the net where the only function of like a website was just to work out which corporations of the year are particularly anti-human, particularly disgusting.
That's
and enough people get together.
I'm sure,
boycott huge amounts of.
I'm sure there is.
Do it. Yeah, it's always small, like small pockets of. Like,
there is a bit of that. Now, I
point.
worry there's a danger, because like earlier you were talking about lawyers. Lawyers love this kind of stuff. You can't. I think there are laws, at least in the United States, that say you can't just single out a company and say that it's horrible. They can sue you.
You can't do it publicly, otherwise it's like libel.
Yeah, it's something like that. You can coordinate a protest or something, and the protest might be like, it's okay to say don't buy this product, but when you start saying don't buy this product because the company destroys the earth,
Wow.
they can sue you for whatever amount they want.
Well, corporations are treated as people now in the US, right? They have like the status of being people, so maybe that kind of plays into it. It's like defamation.
It's exactly what they want. They want to be protected.
Yeah.
They want to have their freedom. But then on the other hand, you can't prosecute a corporation. You can fine a corporation. This is a really big difference.
Yeah.
In the civil court, you can fine them $4 billion, and for an individual like us, they're like, wow, that's a lot of money.
Sure.
But you can't put them in jail. So in the United States, we've gone from too big to fail to too big to prosecute.
Interesting point. Yeah. If enough, I guess, you know, like there's always these grassroots. If enough people got educated to the fact and said, "Hey, listen, you companies have got to change. Let's change the law. Let's get the law changed to the way it was before, which is a reasonable and just sort of deal." Then there's no reason why we can't do that. They're not going to sue. If they want to try and sue me, they go for it. I've got no money, so you know, they can't sue lots of individuals. You know, we can play the same game. But I think that idea is excellent. Get a website out, because information is power. You know, when people sort of get a bit more, have more information like that, then it's quite easy to spread. You know, it's quite easy to spread on Facebook and.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Sorry to interrupt, but I like to say, vote with your pocketbook. I didn't make that up, but somebody else coined that phrase. But just like you said, you don't buy Starbucks because, right? Like, I don't buy blah 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 because, and there's a lot of that, right? There are people that don't eat beef because, or there are people that don't buy new ones of these because, and I think that's great. Now, what would the average, say, economic-minded business person in the United States call you? What would they call you? Anti-capitalist. And what is an anti-capitalist? Communist.
Yeah.
No, but would they call it? I'm just a customer who's making choices. I'm a customer who's making choices because I'm going to have to buy something. I drink coffee, you know. I drink coffee from time to time, so I just don't drink Starbucks coffee, and I've got my reasons.
Actually,
it doesn't taste
we talked with Ethan once about Starbucks coffee, and the reason why I don't drink the Starbucks coffee is because it's more expensive than a normal meal.
Yeah,
at least in Taiwan. I don't know about that.
It's a
But
total rip-off.
to pay 150 and a simple biendan is 50 NT.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what?
Ridiculously priced, so it doesn't taste good. Like lattes tasted diluted. Like
So I don't even if they say they will help children or whatever, it's still kind of like, well, if you wanted charity from me, why don't you just ask me and say like, can you donate $50 for these children? Okay, but don't ask me to buy coffee and tell me these stories about helping children and stuff.
Yeah.
So, what are the things that we need to overcome to get this ball rolling?
I think that the philosopher that I like, which is Eckhart Tolle, is talking about the evolution of the human race and just changing everyone inwardly. That's what's going to work. Nothing else really, I think, because you're going to change most of the people into believing that we are all one as a human race, and therefore change our spiritual outlook. I think spirituality.
So a person, or a group of people that believe that they're connected with everyone else would increase, say, compassion to where you might not buy a product or engage in an activity that is going to hurt other people.
Have sweatshops or anything like that if you were actually enlightened enough. If the whole world was enlightened, we would evolve to a higher level. We wouldn't actually use people. Nobody would.
Okay. That's good. It's a little bit general. I want to talk about specifics.
Well, I think if you can follow what good spiritual leaders like that talk about and then spread it, I think that would be the solution.
So we should do this because, right? Like we should have compassion because, or we should have compassion because if we don't, something like that.
If we don't, we're going to kill ourselves. The human race is going to be wiped out.
Yeah, a lot of people when they hear something like that, they instantly disagree. There's something inside of people psychologically that keeps them from taking the time to understand a concept like that, because it's like, wait, really?
But it can slowly
But I'm not going to die. You know, I'm not going to die if I could understand I might die from cirrhosis of the liver if I continue to drink, but just engaging in consumerism isn't necessarily going to kill me. I'm just being devil's advocate. Any other thoughts? We only have a couple minutes.
I share your optimism about like attitude changing the whole situation. Like if we saw ourselves as one species rather than like little separated units, then we probably wouldn't be able to like commit these kind of basically crimes against humanity. But I don't necessarily think it will come through spirituality or spiritual change. I think it will come through technology. Like the more technology is bringing us closer together, and it might be the net at the moment, it might be like networks, but it's going to start.
Sure, they both will assist each other.
Yeah, and yeah, sure, and yeah, of course. And in our lifetimes, it's going to be in the brain as well. We're going to start working on our own brains, changing how we think about the world, and like maybe taking out all the monkey bits that make us too survivalist and all this stuff we don't need anymore. So I'm pretty optimistic that will make us a better species. That's when we start like actually being enlightened, right?
Can we get rid of the I guess what you call the primitive kind of drives just by, I think that monks get rid of it through enlightenment.
Sure.
I don't think that we can, if you want to talk about removing parts of the brain or something like that to do it.
I'm sure that the
nanotechnology, like rewiring it, or I don't know, making yourself more passive, like without such violent instincts.
That would be like drugs.
The corporations might love to fight against that. You say, really? You guys are going to do something to make somebody stop buying our products? No, you're not.
Well, we got to change the world as well with money.
So, Alex, maybe you can give a final thought here.
I wanted to say something, but I think what was the point of the whole speech? Like the corporation, in order to earn profit, to earn more profit, they use our sympathy, right? For some other things. So is that kind of, let's say, fair, or is that
moral?
How to say moral? Yeah.
It's okay. I think they're propagating the system, aren't they? Keeping the system going, rather than actually doing it.
And helping I think he also mentioned something like helping the poor kids. Okay, if suddenly there are no starving kids in the world, so what would these corporations do? So they need the starving kids in order they can attract more profit from the customers. Yeah, they're keeping the poor. Yeah. That's what Soros with one hand building and one hand destroying. That's what they're doing. So the point of modern capitalism, I guess, as Zizek explains and as I understand, is that the modern capitalists need the poor people. They need starving people and
addicted people.
Addicted, addicted to what? You mean like?
Well, tobacco, alcohol,
okay, yeah.
Sugar.
So they raise the taxes and they cannot quit smoking and they pay more.
Sure.
And the poor people, I mean, if suddenly there are no poor people, what would this corporation do? What would Soros do?
Now, just as something final, Alex, maybe you can. You watched a little bit of one of Zizek's speeches that he gave really recently in the United States. Titled it was having to do with Buddhism and but he didn't really talk about Buddhism a whole lot. You watched just the first part.
I watched just the beginning.
You watched just the beginning, but like maybe you could mention about that we might like to have Zizek come and speak at our forum.
Well, we already mentioned that.
That would be great. Yeah.